I was on a little bit of a hill, but it's really steep and some gravelly little footsteps to put your feet on, and I just got a bit worried and I had to get off of there. So it's very dark and you cannot see my face whatsoever, but I've got my camera out and I'm standing on top of a big hairpin bend down in South Wales, and I wish you could see me, but I haven't got a torch with me, I haven't got a light with me, but I am stood here. It's quite dark and I'm looking down the road and you can just about see that S-bend. What I'm doing is taking lots of different exposures and trying to get the lights coming round, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you back to Photoshop and show you how to blend them in. I'm also trying a couple of really long exposures of like 2 minutes, but there's no cars sometimes, which means the frame's just totally empty, and I want to get the lights all the way around this hairpin bend. It's absolutely amazing, but I really have pushed my luck and got in a really dangerous position to get myself this shot, and I don't quite know how I'm going to get down in the dark, so I'm really quite concerned about it. I'm running a 2 minute exposure at the moment, and then I'm going to go back to shooting some shorter sort of 15, 20, 30 second ones, and then I can time it when the cars come along and just keep pressing that shutter button and getting the exposures every single time as and when a car comes along and get them car lights. Well, here we go. Wish me luck, and I'll speak to you when we've got some light on. I've got a bit of a light on now. You can probably see me. I'm just reporting into Nigel because I know Nigel's not hundreds of miles away, and because where I was standing, it started to get dark really quick, and I was getting a bit nervous, and it started to drizzle and rain. I'm like, oh, I've got to get off of this hill. I was on a little bit of a hill, but it's really steep and some gravelly little footsteps to put your feet on, and I just got a bit worried and I had to get off of there. So I messaged Nigel and give him a 3 words to where I was. If I don't report back within an hour, I'm in trouble. So let's just tell him I'm back in the bad. I am back in the van, safe. Yeah, it's just a safety net really, just in case if I'd have slipped off of there. I know I shouldn't go these things when I'm on my own, but I was desperate to have a go at this image, and I think I've managed to get the images to jump over to Lightroom or Photoshop, this would be, to show you how to put them together. So I will see you in my little office probably, and I'll show you how to put these together, or I'll do it in the van later on. Maybe I'll do that. I'll go and find somewhere to park, get my laptop out, and I'll see you then. So I'm actually in my van, and I did say I was going to put the computer on in the van, didn't I? So I've got my laptop down here. She's set up, ready to go, and I'm only a very basic setup. I haven't got my table out and I haven't done anything quite posh, but I will note this: I'm using the Jackery. I've got the Jackery 240, Explorer 240. This is running my laptop. You can see I've got the power pack plugged in there. This is what powers my laptop when I'm in my van. So I just wanted to make a note that this is what I'm using for my power supply. I have a system that I can actually plug that into an extension lead and run it off of a socket on the wall just here, but it's just as easy to have it on the floor or on the side down there and just plug it in, and it runs my laptop for a weekend, no problems whatsoever. And if you've got a bit of bright sunlight in the daytime, you can actually plug it in and solar it, or you can plug it into your car charger and charge it while you're driving around. So that is my little plug for thanks today to Jackery for the Explorer 240. They also do different sizes. They do a 500 and a 1000 watt as well. The 500 is in the boot just in case I have a complete electrical malfunction. I've got the 500 in the back, which will last me definitely for a whole weekend. It's got a light on it as well, and all sorts of USB sockets and USB-C and everything on it. And you also do the 1000, which is actually at home, and I've got one of them running most of my electrical charger bits and things like that, and it runs off a solar panel at home, so it's saving us a little bit of money. Now it's all installed into the house really. So anyway, back to this. I'm going to open up my screen share, and once I've got my screen share up and running, I'll open up Photoshop and Lightroom. I'll probably import the images into Lightroom first because that's easy for me. I can do a little bit of basic editing on them, sort of contrast, highlights and stuff like that, and then I'll open them up into Photoshop, and we'll do this little bit of a tutorial to show you how we blend these images together to get this nice light trail all the way around this hairpin, and it's a cracking shot. I do hope these images on the computer are as good as the one that was on the back of my phone. So yeah, let's get this going, and I'll switch you back on. Hello, images now into Lightroom. As you can see in front of us, I've got 34 images. all in Lightroom. And what I've done is I've just gone to this one down the end here because it was a 2-minute exposure. I haven't taken as many images as what I was hoping to take. I was going to take a lot more, but the weather got bad, it got really dark, and I had it on a 2-minute exposure just for the last few images. So I know this image is, I've already had a quick look at it, so I'm going to go on this, press D for develop, or go up and click the develop button at the top, and it's going to bring this image up in front of you. Now do excuse my laptop, it's a little bit slow. And you can see I've got this lovely trail of lights, nice white lights coming up the hill and round the bend, turning to red, going back up the hill that way. And coming down, we've got this nice one single trail of white light. This is really nice all on its own. You don't really need to do a lot with it. You can see my van over there on that side, but we've got a lot of rubbish down here that we don't want. I've cloned out the bin down in this bottom corner, we didn't want that, and I've also had a sensor spot up in this top corner which I need to clean. It's a brand new camera, XT5, and I've got a sensor spot on it already. It's just terrible in it. But yeah, the easiest way to get rid of this bottom part of the image, and what the setting I use, I've got a couple of presets down here, and I use my HDR setting, which is basically HDR means highlights down, shadows up, blah blah blah. I mean, I've just brought the highlights back up a little bit to get a bit of colour in the sky, and I brought my shadows down just to get rid of some of the stuff around the outside, because I want this image to look quite dark. First of all, let's just give this a crop. I think we're going to go to a 16:9. So we click on 16:9, lift it to the top of the page. That's got rid of a lot of the stuff at the bottom, but let's just even out this gap on the right hand side to the gap on the left hand side by just pulling that in just a little bit, and we can get that pretty much the same sort of distance either side, and then just lift that to the top. So that's got rid of some of the stuff down the bottom there then. So we'll click that as okay. That's now got us a 16:9 crop, and it looks a lot nicer because we've got rid of that mush down the bottom that we don't really need. What I'm going to do now is go back into library, which is basically pressing G. If you press G, you go back to your grid formation. You can see all my photos there. We're using this one, this is the one we've just highlighted, that's the one we're actually working on. So I need to now copy all the settings from this to every single image. Now if I press Control A, or if you go up into Edit, you can go into Select All, which you can see there is Control A, or I think it's on a Mac it's something like Alt A, is it? So you select all, and then we're going to go over here to settings. You've got sync and you've got sync settings. It's the settings we want, and we're going to make sure, because some of these might be unticked like this, you might have them unticked, and I want to check all. So I'm going to check all the settings, which means all the basic settings, highlights, contrast, blah blah blah, the digital setting, any sharpening I've done on it, any lens corrections, and the Fuji does that automatically. We've got effects, so we've got a little bit of cropping as well. We've done the cropping, we've got healing and any masking, so it'll do the same sensor spot on every single image hopefully. And all we do is click sync, and what it'll do is it'll start syncing all the settings for that one image onto the other 33 images, and every single one will be exactly the same processing, and we just have to check them when we go to them and actually finish them, because you might find the exposure was slightly out. But this will just give you the basics of getting all the settings the same and the same size and shape, because the settings were, the camera was set up and I didn't move the camera, it was the same focal length, I just left it exactly the same and just kept taking pictures with it. So hopefully that will just do that. So I'll come back to you as soon as this is finished doing what it's doing, because it's going to take a few minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the first image. I'm just going to double click it to open it up. I'm just going to have a look and see what it looks like. So that was my test shot, just to see if I got my framing right. It looks all right. There's my little van down there in the corner. So we've got this lovely road snaking through and then snaking off down it, and then it goes off down this way as well. So it's really cool. What a really, really amazing location. It really is. I love this. It's really right up my street. It could probably do with some better editing, but I think for now I do. And I'm just going to flick through the images just to show you what we've got. So there's a darker one with some darker sky. See, I did a darker one because the sky is a little bit more moody and broody, so I might use that later on. Then we've got a lighter one. You can just see there's a trail of lights coming up the hill, and then we press it again. So what I've basically done is, as it was coming up the hill, and I got my settings, and my settings are, if I can go to I for information, you can see my settings. I always call it XT5. This is my XT5. If it says 4, then I'll be using the XT4. It's a RAW file, which is basically a Fuji RAW. Taken today, the 30th of the 12th, 22 at 4:20, so you can tell it was going dark. So it's one click, and it's going to see 15 seconds at f20, ISO 125, and we were at 12.6 millimeters on the 10-24 FR lens. So if I leave that up in the screen there, you'll be able to see all the settings as and when I flick through them, and you'll see if this changes from one to the other. But this should stay, 12.6 should stay exactly the same on each one. So let's go back one. You can see the lights are at the bottom. I took another shot straight away and the lights were coming up a bit further, and we've also got a little bit of light over here on this side. Go to the next one, this light's now coming right the way round there, and we're still on 15 seconds, and this one's come down the hill. In fact, this one's gone past us and gone up the hill. So in 15 seconds it's gone from there all the way round and up to somewhere about here, and this one's come down the hill. Go to the next one, you can see now this one's carried on down and round the corner. The other one's gone from red lights, carried on all the way up the hill. Go to the next one. You can see we've got some more lights coming down the hill, and it's a nice reflection there. That's beautiful, that is. We've got some more coming up the hill and some more red lights going further up. And we go to the next one, still the same. We're still on 15 seconds. It's getting slightly darker because obviously it's getting darker. We've got another set of lights coming up, and what I want to do is try and blend all these sections of red, because that's a beautiful deep red there. You must have had the brakes on, or it's like these new LED lights. So just keep flicking through. Another nice bright white one coming up the hill. Oh, that one's taking a bit to drop in. Again, we've got this one's a slightly brighter. Let's have a look. 9 seconds, so I changed it to f14 now. So I've got a shallower depth of field, which makes no difference whatsoever on an image like this, but it's letting a little bit more light in. So we've gone to 9 seconds, still the same focal distance of 12.6. And again, we've got all these lights. We'll flick through them. Look at that for a beautiful bit of light. So that one in the front, that's the top section there, and the bottom section there. The next one's got our mid section from there to there, from there to there. And this isn't ideal because where the lights join here, there might be a little tiny gap, but I can actually fix that if I'm lucky. So yeah, this one's coming down, next one's coming down. The more you add in, the more lights. That, if you go back one, you can see there I've got a double set of red lights. That was a lorry going up the hill. 12 seconds. That one's a good nice swirl. 12 seconds. So that's what I want to do. I want to take all of those images now, exactly as they are. There's 120 seconds, so that's 2 minutes. So 2 minutes brings it all the way down the hill, around the corner, and all the way from the corner up the hill. So we're going to blend these together in Photoshop. And the easiest way to do that, if I go back to grid, just to show you, make sure they're all selected. So with Control A, make sure they are all selected. If you've only got one highlighted like that, if you press Control and A, or go up in here and select all, Control A, it will select them all for you. And then we're going to go on the first image. We're going to right click, we're going to go into edit in, and then we're going to go down to open in layers in Photoshop. That's what we're going to do, open them in layers, click on that, and it will now take 34 images and open them up in Photoshop. So I will be back once that's done, because that's going to take ages on this laptop. So all the photos now have been aligned, and you can see around the edge of the frame of the image there is a little bit of deviation in the framing, so you can see that the camera or something has moved very, very slightly. So we'll crop that afterwards and just tidy that up. But for now we want to look at the images. So we've got our images, they're all selected. If I go to the top image, we can actually turn the eyeball and flick it on and off. So if we turn it on, it's a light image. If we turn it off, we've got the darker image. Now I think I'm going to use the darker image as a base. I'm just going to turn the next one off as well as I go down. So the next one starts to have a little bit of light coming through, so I'm going to keep the darker image on the top. And one way that I've learned to do this, and there is other ways of doing this, the easiest way to do this is to have your main image at the top, look at the image below, and what you want to do is you want to let through the light. So if I turn this off, I want to let this light back in, and if I turn that one off, the light's further up. So I want to let this light in, and if I turn this one off, I want to let this light in. So the way I've done it in the past, and I'm not a professional doing this, it's not something I do a lot of, I'm going to use my dark image, and then I'm going to take this layer and see where you got the layers here. It gives you a list of things you can turn this layer into. So if you turn it down to overlay, it overlays this image over the other one, so you can see the light coming through, but it's actually overlaying it, it's making it really dark. So the best way of doing this is using this lighten. So if I go out of this a moment, go back to normal, you see that's the normal image. If I go down to lighten, suddenly it's lightened and it's brought through the lighter parts of the image, not the darker parts, because if you go into darken, you'll see it just makes everything dark. So it's using the dark parts. So what it does is uses the light parts of the image below, and it's letting them through. So this has let this part through. If I go again next to the next layer, I can go onto that one and lighten that one. I think I'm just going to check, make sure. Go onto that one and click that, and you see the way it's let this one through. And then I can go onto this image and I can lighten that one, put that one onto lighten, and you see how it's let this piece through. And basically each layer is being lightened, and you're letting the lighter part of the image come through, but not the darker part. So it's a clever way of doing it. So you go down to the next one, same again, lighten, And as you do it, you'll see the lights are appearing. Now we've got this lovely streak of lights going all the way around. Again, we'll go down to the next one, lighten, and all we're doing is letting through. If I go back and put it back to normal, you can see this section here. Just look at this section on this left hand side of the image. You'll see when I click on lighten, it brings it out. Okay, so you've got a nice second set of lights coming through that way. And then we're going to go down to the next one, and we're going to lighten that. And this is the easiest way of doing it. And I think if you go onto one of the layers and turn it on and off, you can see that that's the part of the image it's letting through. Okay, and go to the top one, and you can see it's letting part of the image through. And let's go to this one, and it's letting that part of the image through. Okay, so we go down to the next layer, and we'll carry on doing this as we go down until we're happy with all the different layers, and then we can go back and turn certain layers off and let certain layers back on. So we'll go down and just lighten all the layers, and then we'll have a look afterwards and see what it looks like. Right, so as you can see now, I've got to the bottom layer. You can actually select the layers, so you can actually shift and select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can actually lighten them all in one go, which is a lot quicker way of doing it. So if we go to the bottom and work our way up, you can see now that all these images, if you look in that section there, are all now on lightened. Now, one thing I noticed, if you look here in the right hand side, right next to my van, at one point a van pulled in and stopped next to my van. Well, that's quite messy. You've got this little jagged bit of lights where he's come in and come back out again, and what I want to do is try and get rid of that. So it was somewhere down here on the bottom part. So let's just knock these images off and on one at a time until we find that one that's got the car in it, and we're going to get rid of it because we don't particularly want it there. So let's keep switching them on and off. I'm sure it was later on, but it might be a bit further up. Oh, there's one. You can just see now as I turn that off and turn that on, you're getting this little bit of a funny jagged line just here where the van was, off and on. So what I'm going to do with that one and that one below it, so I think if I go onto this layer, I think I can add a mask. So if I turn that on, add a mask, and then with a black brush, if I remember rightly, with a black brush, I can then, let's make that a bit bigger. Where are we? Black brush, that one, layer. I should be able to paint over this section here and just get rid of the little lights that are in that section that I don't particularly want. And then go to the next layer. So again, put a mask over it, and we're just going to paint in that corner. See where that disappeared just then? Just gets rid of a bit of those lights that are not there. And we need to get rid of the van. And you can see the little spot on the side there that I'm actually messing with. The next layer, and hopefully this will get rid of the van. He's obviously sat there a little bit longer. So we need to go to the next layer. Add a layer. There we go, there's a little bit more where he just started moving a bit. Maybe the next layer. Another mask. There we go, he's getting rid of him. We're just going to go back a little bit like that. And he is still in this section there, so there is something going on. So let's go back to this one and just paint over around my van, the one below it, because there is something going on next to my van that looks a bit lighter. Or is that just me? I think no, it's a reflection, isn't it? So let's just go to that one to make sure there's nothing in that one as well. And again, we'll just paint that off. And what we have got is a slight line starting there, but I don't think that's too bad. I think that works quite well. So what we've done then is we've got rid of that horrible messy van just on the side there because it was just spoiling the image. So now we've got these lines coming up all the way through the hairpin and running all the way around. You can see the lovely reds coming around there with the lorry lights, lots of white lights coming around the corner, and then lots of white lights coming around here and the red lights going down the hill. So that works pretty well. One thing I'm not keen on though is the sky. See up here the sky's gone quite weird because we've got all these different layers over it. I think the quickest way to fix the sky is just to drag this down onto plus, which will duplicate it, gives you a copy, and in that blending mode we're going to put that back to normal, onto normal mode. Let's just try darken just to see what happens. Darken or normal, it's the same. We can just try a couple of other modes to see if it makes any difference. No, none of them do. So let's go back to normal, and then we just need to bring in all the bottom half of the image. Okay, so this is the easiest way for me to do it is just put a mask on there like that, go back to a black brush, and we're going to press our space keys, bracket keys, and we're just going to have a nice big brush, and we're just going to basically paint all this back in. Okay, so we'll paint all this lot back in like it is down the bottom, and you're just going to keep the sky a bit darker, and then we can actually do a little bit of modelling on this if we wanted to as well. Okay, so that's keeping our sky in nice and dark. Now the other way of doing this, we've got a bit in the middle as well. Let's bring it all back in, and then we're going to darken some of the rest of it down a little as well. So we've got this section that we know is our mask. I'm then going to go back to a white brush, so I'm going to flick this over to a white brush, and I'm going to bring my opacity of the brush right down. So the opacity at the top there, I'm going to bring it down to 15, and now I'm just going to paint back in here to make the brush a little bit smaller with our cursor keys, and I'm just going to paint this back in here just to darken some of this down, because this was nicer when it was darker, and with it being 15% opacity, we can just brush over it until we get it in the section we want. Again, a little bit darker down here, maybe in the woodlands. Brush that back in. Go a smaller brush and just brush this back in. Just do some brush strokes around the edge, just where you want them, just to darken parts of the image in. Down maybe around the van a little bit. Coming around this corner we're going to darken. Maybe a little bit on the edge of the road. Just to darken it down, just to give us some of those tone stuff back in where the dark parts were. Right, I think that's not too bad, and I think now I'm going to take it back into Lightroom and really crisp it up and make it look a little bit more special. Put another sort of a look over it and make it really pop out. But that's using all the images. You can see our mask is on that side there, looking quite nice and splendid, and then we've got those little masks which are covering up everything else, and everything else is in a lighten mode. So we click close, and we'll open it up in Lightroom, and another couple of moments and we'll be finished. Remember to click yes. Back in Lightroom now, as you can see, we've got our files back in Lightroom, and we're showing up a TIFF file. So this is a TIFF file, this is the conversion. So if we double click on this, it'll bring our file up, and you see we've got this little bit of a white edge around it, haven't we? Let's just turn the data off the top. We've got this little white edge which we need to fix first of all. So we need to go into develop, click on our crop tool, and maybe just tweak it, straighten it up a little bit. Doesn't need a lot, and that may have cured our little white line. So let's just close it and have a look. It has, yeah. So we've just tweaked it a little bit and we've got rid of our white lines. Maybe there's a little bit at the top, so I'm just going to have to squeeze it down just a touch, just to make sure we got rid of our white lines. So there's our virtually final image, and I just want to do a couple of things really, just to have a look and see if it makes any difference. So I'm going to hover over my HDR setting again, and hopefully we'll get a bit of an idea of what it's going to look like with a HDR, which you can see it looks too much like daylight, too crunchy, too gritty, so that's not going to work. So I'm going to go over to my highlights and try bringing my highlights down, and what that's doing is it's just messing with the lights a little bit, isn't it? So we're just going to bring them down just a little tiny bit, I think, and we're going to just try our whites to see what our whites do. And again, our whites are just taking the sheen off of the lights a little bit, and I think that may be better because we don't really want them too bright. So I'm just going to bring them down just a little bit. Clarity, I'm just going to lift that, see what that does. No, it makes a mess, so we'll click that one back. Let's try a bit of dehaze. What dehaze is doing is it's just deepening the actual image in the background and making it a little bit moodier, which I don't mind a little bit of that. Vibrance, we can lift the vibrance. That should bring up our colours a little bit and our lights a little bit. And I'm just going to tend to warm it. I'm going to try and warm it just a little bit and see what it does when I warm it up a bit. Hopefully it's going to give you a bit more of a richer feel to it. I don't want it too warm, I don't want it too rich. Maybe a little bit like that, and a little tiny bit of magenta in there. And shadows, let's just try the shadows. Let's see if we can bring them shadows down. Does it make it too dark? I think it probably does. So we'll leave our shadows where they are. I don't think we're far off really. The only thing I will do, let's go to our vignette. Let's give it a vignette, and we're going to do this a slightly different way actually. We're going to go into our brush tool, and we're going to pick radial gradient, and we're going to put a big radial gradient over the center part of the image. where the main attraction is, and we don't want this part actually vignetting, so we're going to try and control this section, because this is the bit we want to try and keep nice and good if we can. Might just shrink it down a little bit over there. So that's our main vignette part. We're going to pull out our center to make sure it's not affecting too much around this white line. We can just turn it slightly and make it fit where we want it. So hopefully now it should darken everything around the outside and leave our center part quite brightly. So we'll just bring the exposure down, and you see what it's doing is it's darkening the center. So we just need to flick invert, which is over on this corner here. Click invert and it'll start working on the outside. Now we can go back and just adjust it to bring our area in the background down a little bit. If I just toggle that on and off, wherever the on and off toggle is, there's it down there. That's before, and that's after. So it's just brought a vignette around the outside of the image, which I think works quite nicely. And I don't think that's bad now. So let's have a little look. Yeah, that's pretty cool. There's one other thing you could do if, you know, like if I didn't want my van here, I could just clone out my van as well. But I think for now I'm just going to leave it in and have a look. But I think that'll do for the final image. And then all I do then is save that as a JPEG and put it up on the screen. So, what do you think of that? Simple and easy, just duplicate all the layers, put them on Lightroom, and away you go. Very simple. I'd like to see if you can have a go. Maybe you can go out, take yourself a trip, get yourself motivated, go and find a bit of a bendy road, maybe stand on like a motorway bridge or a dual carriageway bridge where there's a roundabout or something, get all the lights going around and just snap off lots of different exposures, put it on continuous. If you've got a shutter release, put it on continuous, lock it off, and it'll just keep taking them long exposure. It'll go open for 10, close it and close, open for 10, open for 10 and open for 10, and it'll just keep taking them, and you can just blend them together like this, just as an experiment. Have a go, put them on the LVA, which is the Landscape Vlogphotography Adventures Facebook group. I'll put a link, I'll put a name across and a link in the description. If you go onto the Facebook group, if you're not a member, come in and say hello, join us, and yeah, bob us a few images up. It'll be interesting to see what you come up with. Love that. That is brilliant. One of the best roads I've ever seen, I think, for that sort of thing, and it's been many years I fancied trying it, so done. Ciao for now, thanks for watching, give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe, all the other Benari, and I'm off. It's nearly bedtime. I've been sat here way too long, the computer's way too slow. Ta-da.